This is Nice Work. I'm Alex Chambers.
And I'm Tyler Lake. And Alex, this is our last episode.
It is. It's been a good run.
Not exactly a long run, but a good one for sure.
What do you think? Long enough to do a clip show episode?
I think more than enough, and that's just how good of a run it actually was.
All right, then let's do it. A walk down memory lane.
Coming up on Nice Work after this.
Nice Work, Alex Chambers.
Tyler Lake.
Tyler, since this is our last episode, I thought we'd spend it reflecting on what we did and why we did it, and playing some of our favorite moments in the show.
Well, as to why we did it, I think we did it because we thought somebody ought to.
True.
And it turned out we were the people in this community who could do it, just for a bit, tell stories about arts and culture in Bloomington.
Yeah, there's so much really excellent national media, places where people are thinking about big ideas, trying to understand art and literature and society. Mm-hmm. But with the polarization in our political discourse, I've gotten more and more convinced that we need that on a local level, too. We need places to think about who we are in southern Indiana and local places to discuss what's going on.
We've got great venues, Eskenazi, Eiffel, Far, great music, more great film coming with Cicada Cinema's permanent location.
Very true.
But the alternative weeklies where you'd get reviews of local shows and personal essays and more from people in your community, things like Bloomington's Writer Magazine and Film Series, those things are getting harder and harder to make.
Yes. So, Tyler, when I was making Interstates, I interviewed an American philosopher who spent most of her adult life in Germany. Susan Neiman is her name. She told me that there's a much more robust local intellectual culture in Europe.
In Europe in general, it's still true. It's not just in Sartre and de Beauvoir's days. There's a lot of public thinking going on. It's subsidized. There's an infrastructure. People do go to plays, but they go to talks and discussions and stuff. That's just what people do. There's great public radio all the time, huge numbers of different radio programs. Television, politicians, at least from some parties, the Social Democrats, really like doing public discussions with philosophers. I mean, like the president of the country or the chancellor of the country. I mean, this is a thing in Germany, which is very hard to imagine in the States. And I suppose, although there are many things I don't like about Germany, that's one of the things that I do like very much. So that's part of the culture in a way that I think shows, no, everybody doesn't want to be watching Netflix. I mean, I watch Netflix sometimes. Sometimes there's good stuff on Netflix. And, we go to the movies and it's not, there's no disinterest in popular culture. On the contrary, there's simply more of a seamless move between whatever it is people are listening to or watching at the moment, and what here would often be called high culture that isn't accessible and isn't what the people want to hear. Well, if you give it to them, especially if it's free or not terribly expensive, you'd be surprised how many people would like to engage in pretty high-level discussions of, interesting problems.
Public media seems like a really good place to be hosting those conversations. So here are a few examples of those, and we're going to start with the beginning of a conversation our late co-host Kate Young had with the artist Carrie Hott.
The first of your work that I encountered was a newsprint spread filled front and back with these clipped images of lamps and light bulbs arranged in this tidy grid, and it was called Lamps That Sense Us. So maybe we could start there, and can you talk about that project?
Sure. The Lamps That Sense Us, I call that newsprint piece that you have, I call it a circular. So I'll start with the format and what it's referencing, which is the grocery store or drugstore circulars that are still, around, even though a lot of our material is circulated digitally. There's still these kind of like low-cost newsprint, coupon deal advertising, leaflets, circulars that are filled with products, and they're very busy. So I chose to adapt and reference that format at a time when my research this was around, I would say all of this was really like at the top for me between 2017 and 2019. I had spent the decade prior researching artificial light and its history and how it was connected to the industrialization of labor and the way that artificial light changed the workday, the way that it changed according to which fuel source was being used. I was particularly focused on whale oil and artificial light. So I say all that because I had spent years really looking back, and then around that time became quite fascinated with this new development in lighting technology, where lamps were not only electric lamps, but could also have other components like a motion sensor or a camera. Perhaps something that's really commonly seen or understood is like a Ring camera that is part of a system, a home security system installed outside of a home. And you have a motion sensor that would set off a light, but perhaps there's also a camera in that. So that was really intriguing to me because I was seeing an evolution in lighting technology in my life. And a lot of what I was researching and looking at the form of was past lighting innovations and like changes in lamp technology and how it affected human behavior and like the way we work and the way we live and the way we understand the world. And because the way that I was understanding these new lighting innovations was through retail spaces, like through what was being sold, the way that I was understanding these was by looking at products. I then decided to create my own sort of like product circular to show, I think of it also as like a guide. Here are the lamps that sense us. Here's a matrix of all of these different devices that not only light, but they may also sense you or capture your image in multiple ways, potentially, depending on what they have.
Yeah, when I saw it, I also read it as kind of so keep your eye out for these.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you might not realize it, but that one has a camera in it. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, in my work, I will think of a form. My research just continues. It's like a river underneath my studio that I just keep rolling. I'm someone who makes things. I'm someone who designs things and thinks a lot about form and material. So I can't say where the circular, like if there was a moment that I can recall that seemed to be the solution, but I just thought, well, let's try this. And as I was making it, I realized, this is not only about creating an index of as many of these types of lamps that I can find. This is also about provoking, like, here's a guide. Here's perhaps you might not recognize this as a lamp that has another function. Here's my kind of overt but also covert guide to these types of lamps.
You can explore more of Carrie Hott's work at carriehott.com. That's hot with 2 T's. And her work is such a good example of an artistic practice that helps us notice patterns in our society.
Yeah. And art doesn't have to be weird and experimental to help us see our world more clearly. I mean, weird and experimental in a complimentary sort of way.
Of course.
About a month before Kate died, she ran an interview with photographer Rania Matar, who has a show up at the Eskenazi Museum. It's a collection of large-scale photographs of Lebanese women. In this clip, you'll hear Kate first, then Layla Reichert, who curated the show, and then Rania Matar.
There's kind of this contrast between beauty and destruction, it seems to me like. And some of the spaces are damaged in ways that look like maybe they were bombed, and then some of them just look like maybe they were damaged but then abandoned, and so there's neglect and decay. And also the way that you photograph them, those surfaces, the walls in these buildings are just, they're so rich with texture and color and history and just kind of layer upon layer. I'm thinking of the one of the woman in, I think it's a hotel.
Oh, the Allée, the Grand Allée Hotel. Yeah.
Yes.
The black.
Yes, and with the skirt, with the floral print, and then there's a kind of a painting above. Just, I could stare at that image for days. The different layers on the walls showing all these iterations of what this building maybe has been. And then behind her, like she's behind some kind of frame, and then behind her, it seems like there's a mirror that's also fragmented. I mean, it's just incredible. I don't know if you'd like to talk about that one a little bit.
I'm so glad you saw all that in it. To talk about the layers, Lebanon has a lot of texture. That's kind of all I could describe it. And there's layers of history on these walls. Like even when you walk on the street, sometimes you have a graffiti and then it's covered with ads of some sort. Then the ads start dripping. Then there's a picture of some leader of some sort, and then this kind of thing, and you have an internet kind of ad of where you could get Wi-Fi or something, and you have these kind of, they become almost the fabric of the city.
Yeah.
And the destruction, the layers are also, there's a level of decay sometimes that's not necessarily bombed.
Right.
And sometimes there are places that have been bombed, and you don't know if this is a destruction from left over from the Civil War of this, or is this is something that happened through different wars or the 2006, or
2006.
Yeah, you add it up, and then the port explosions. So the layering is pretty important.
Yeah.
But also this was a country that was what they referred to as the Paris of the Middle East. So I'm coming back to that hotel, because people used to come from all over the world to these beautiful places, and this hotel is in the mountain in a gorgeous village called the Allée. And I had been to that hotel to photograph before, but I had never discovered that specific room. And I think it was like a bar / kind of a gambling place of some sort. So when I went in with her, it's kind of interesting. Her name is Rhea, and I always tell the women, bring different clothes with you, because sometimes I don't know them. I don't know what the space is going to look like. I don't know what the photo shoot is going to look like, and it's nice to have options.
Yeah.
And she had showed me that skirt, and they had the top as well. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't like that at all. Let's leave it in the car. And then we went in that space. And when I all of a sudden saw the whole thing, I'm like, sorry, I'm going to go back at that skirt.
Yeah, because there's a mural type image above her that has a floral aspect to it that really speaks to that skirt. Like it's like they were made for each other.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so this one for me also speaks to the good old days of Lebanon, the beautiful golden age as well. And so this hotel was not bombed. This has just been abandoned and decayed. And during the war, the Civil War, some of these villages would like fight with each other. There'd be a Druze village and a Christian village, and so people kind of fled, and something you might see leftovers from wars without them having been necessarily bombed.
And so a lot of these spaces that you're photographing in, they're not rare examples of these really, that's the kind of thing I would seek out and try to find those kind of spaces to photo. But it sounds like this is really representative of the fabric of the place.
Absolutely. But I was seeking them out as well. And I'm so grateful I got access to so many of them, because as things got a bit better before now, somehow a lot of these places some of them I did trespass, we were climbing over things, but some of them, they really now lock them and you cannot go in. One of them being that hotel.
Rania Matar's exhibit, Where Do I Go?, is at the Eskenazi Museum through August 2nd, so you still have time to go see it, and you should, because the colors and compositions of the photographs are stunning, worth it just for that, but there's so much to think about after leaving that show.
There really is. But as worthwhile as it is to spend time reflecting on what something means, we did have other goals on Nice Work. We wanted to surprise you and ourselves with all the great, interesting things happening here. We can confirm that we did that for at least one person.
That's Danny William. You might have heard their name in our credits, and if you've encountered any of our social media, there's a really good chance Danny's brilliant eye and hand was involved. Hey, Danny's in the booth. Hey, Danny, do you want to come in here?
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for coming in.
Danny, were you surprised by something that you learned about the art scene in Bloomington while you were working on this show?
I mean, definitely. I grew up in a small town outside of Indianapolis, shout out Greenfield, and I always thought that if I wanted to find an interesting art scene, I'd have to move to Chicago, LA, New York, Boston, somewhere bigger and more coastal than where we are right now. And I was so surprised to come to Bloomington in the first place, and then especially working at Nice Work to find so many interesting and diverse artists, both really intellectual and really heady and stuff that I can't understand, and also really fun and cool stuff that I just enjoy looking at. I just thought that was incredibly interesting, and I had no clue I'd find it here in a small college town.
Were there any particular artists or stories that we covered that just jumped out at you?
Oh boy. One specifically that I loved was Kate's coverage of Puppies, who was someone that I had never heard of. I believe she's from Brazil, so not someone that I would have found just sort of naturally, I think, if she hadn't have come to Bloomington. And just hearing about that and seeing these photos from this really weird artist talk, I immediately started Googling this person. I was like, I need to hear more.
I think she was lying on a mattress.
Yes.
During the artist talk.
And wearing a leaf-covered dress. Headdress thing?
Pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, she seemed pretty awesome. I really, I agree with that one, actually. Kate turning me on to Puppies was like a big revelation for me, for sure.
Definitely.
So thank you so much, Danny. I think we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we'll hear all about some other of those discoveries.
Welcome back to Nice Work. I'm Alex Chambers. And here are a few of our favorite discoveries. First, Tyler, the very first story you did for Nice Work is still one of my favorite things we've aired.
Ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
Does it actually matter how something gets started?
It actually started with, I do this because of my friends. And it started with Scott over there. Scott saw something on social media. I think it was Reddit. He saw an example of a rotor guard.
Which is sort of a horseshoe-like piece of metal. It's meant to keep the brakes from getting roughed up.
And it looked really cool. Like someone had custom fabricated it and was like, well, what's that? And maybe Peeler or John said, that's bike polo. And Scott was like, let's try it out.
That's Vinny Beyer. Scott is Scott Coffin. Vinny, Scott, Peeler, and John all volunteer at the Bloomington Bike Project. That's where Bloomington Bike Polo was born.
I bought some poplar dowels and some PVC pipe and some screws and some bolts. There's some nuts and some bolts, and put together some very crappy mallets.
The game's pretty simple. 4 people on each team. At the end of each court are little kid-sized hockey goals. You try to hit a small rubber ball into your opponent's goal with a long mallet while riding a bike. It's even harder than it sounds, which is probably why everyone's so supportive. I couldn't help but notice when Vinny told me how the club started, he stopped to make a quick note.
I do this because of my friends.
I think that's true of a lot of hobbies. This particular group seems more aware, or maybe just more vocal about it than most.
At least for me, it's, a way of being more like face-to-face with people and share an experience, an appreciation for sport. As passionate as people are about it, it really is about having fun.
Oh, yeah!
They've been at this for several years now. Certainly seems like a bona fide little community they have here. They've traveled to tournaments, even hosted one recently. The Tenderloin Classic, they called it. They held it at an ice rink. Apparently, they're great places for bike polo, once they've thawed out.
Oh, yeah.
They come out here to this park, most of them, twice a week. They build an elaborate little border to create a court. It has dozens of pieces. They build it up and tear it down every time they play. They've made it out of wood planks connected by brackets and pins. It's very DIY. They build it all, the bikes, the goals, the court itself. It's not a turnkey hobby. It's more like building a toy out of Legos and playing with it, instead of pulling an action figure out of a box. Even after you've built it, it's not an easy sport. Riding a bike with one hand, holding a mallet with the other, trying not to run into another rider. Just touching the ball is deceptively difficult.
Good pressure. Hold on.
It all feels like some kind of labor of love. Maybe that's why it's so kind. They're so kind. Kind to one another. Even kinder to newcomers. Sam Stewart's first game was like that.
The appeal for me was just how nice everybody was. A lot of sports, kind of the reason that I never joined was because it was so competitive. It was like, okay, you're playing soccer, now you gotta get a goal or we're gonna like shame you or whatever. But once I came and joined this group, it was like, hey, you touched the ball, good job. And it just really feels welcoming.
That's a good job, Sam.
Sam will be back next week. You can come too. Anyone can. They are going to build it. It's up to you whether or not you want to come. In the pretty short time that this show existed, just under 9 months, we made sure to spend a lot of time talking about arts and culture here in Bloomington.
Yes. For example, Nice Work contributor Carl Templeton talked to the hosts of the Bloomington podcast, A Beautiful Day in the Gulch. Turns out people have been calling Bloomington the Gulch for a few decades. Carl dug into that history.
Bloomington's had a bustling DIY scene for a long time, and it has a particular name associated with it. There's a podcast called It's a Beautiful Day in the Gulch, and an album of the same exact name by hardcore punk band Laughing Gas. There's the song Gulch Brigade by hardcore band Full Stride. Those are all from the past 6 years, but it goes back even farther. Gulcher Records, the label that put out the Gizmos, one of Indiana's first punk bands, started in the 1970s. These days you can see it on hardcore punk t-shirts and tote bags too. But why the word? Why do people keep calling Bloomington the Gulch? Bloomington played an important role in the early days of punk rock in Indiana. Gulcher Records was a DIY record label and a zine that Bob Richert started in 1975. Richert was a grad student in geology, but he found himself spending more time spinning rock music at the campus radio station than studying rocks. By 1973, he discovered zines. It didn't take long for him to start Gulcher magazine. That might be the first association in print of Bloomington and the word Gulch. But Richert didn't coin it. People had been calling Bloomington the Gulch already. He thinks it might be the terrain, but he admits he might be biased, since he arrived as a geology grad student. Some people think Gulcher Magazine and Gulcher Records were named after a book that came out the year before. Gulcher, by rock critic Richard Meltzer, is a collection of his sprawling thoughts on rock music and culture of the previous decade. Bob Richert insists that he didn't name the zine and the record label after Meltzer's book. One of the bands on Gulcher Records was the Gizmos. They put Bloomington on the map as an important place in DIY rock. Formed in 1976, the Gizmos have been called Bloomington's first punk band. They sang the song "The Midwest Can Be Alright." That came out on a compilation album called Red Snurt's The Sound of Gulcher in 1981. Dale Lawrence was a part of the Gizmos at that point. He sang on that song. The thing is, the Midwest didn't always feel alright. Dale remembers what it was like being part of the first wave of punk rock in Indiana. It felt lonely. He felt like not many people cared about the bands he liked, like Sex Pistols and the Ramones. People really didn't get it.
We were the weird band on the bill. We were able to play most of the bars in town, but never more than once.
They actually did get to go back once. It was for a Battle of the Bands contest.
That night was kind of wild, but that would have been like just as school resumed, 1979, and there was enough interest that slam dancing was sort of happening, and that got kind of out of hand. One of the organizers of the contest got the wind knocked out of him, got cannonballed.
At this point, it's the early 80s. The word Gulch has taken on its first life in Bloomington. The Gulch is shaping into the space for punks, weirdos, and freaks to be themselves. A lot of indie music comes from people who feel marginalized in society. This is a space for people to be accepted for who they are. It's graduating from just a word to be thrown around to almost a badge of honor. And then it disappears for a few decades.
Alex, at one point, one of my favorite interviews, you talked to local radio legend Jim Mannion, and he said something that is just so amazingly Bloomington, I definitely thought we had to give it a second listen.
I think what we're fishing for here is like, what is it? What is it in Bloomington that inspires all this unique musical creativity?
Yeah.
And it's not just music, it's all the arts. I don't know. I've always been a little more mystically inclined than a lot of people because I used to be very interested in ancient Egypt. And I remember reading a theory about ancient Egyptians generating electricity by running water through limestone. What is underneath the ground here? A lot of water running through limestone. Now,
like
that's
that.
pretty woo-woo, but so am I. But
I'll take that.
But
and it fits with the geological gulch aspect.
But there's
of
something,
place.
there's something there, but in a more rational way of looking at things, especially in the 70s and 80s. Have you ever read David Byrne's book about music?
No.
Well, there's a chapter in there about how to start a music scene. And, it was like cheap rent. Be isolated from the rest of the world in one way. And so Bloomington checked all the boxes in terms of that too. It might be kind of hard to imagine now for anybody in Bloomington here in 2025, but in the 1980s, before the south side of the square was redone by CFC as the Fountain Square Mall, those upstairs of those buildings was crawling with art studios, music studios, rehearsal studios, little apartments that weren't really legal, but that people were living in. And it wasn't just punk rock. In the mid-'80s, there was everything from hardcore punk bands to Malcolm Dalglish was up there and had his office and his...
Hammer Dulcimer.
Yeah. And it was a really heady time.
I love that Jim is a little out there and that he owns it, and I would want actually nothing less from him. I like the ones that are a little out there.
You are going to love Boots Riley then.
I do love Boots Riley.
Don't we all? I talked to him a month or two ago in front of a live audience. So Boots Riley wrote and directed a couple of movies. The second one, the most recent, is I Love Boosters.
It's great. You should go see it.
You should. It's in theaters now. Before he was a director, Boots started the hip-hop group The Coup. He was the lead singer and wrote the vocals. He's also been a labor organizer and an activist since he was a teenager.
The movies are really fun, too. And I think that there's something also connected to organizing about how much fun there is. And whether we want to use the word fun, whether we want to think about style and the enjoyment of style, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I first got involved in a discipline party in 1986.
Did you say a discipline party?
A disciplined revolutionary revolutionary party, progressive labor party.
Okay.
And some of the leaders of that party were in their 70s at the time. For me at the time, I was 15. And if you were 26, 25, you were old. But these were people who had been around and had been communists since the 20s, including an old Russian woman that knew people that were part of the Russian Revolution. So they were all the funniest people I knew. One of the people that weren't as old is that it was this British dude named Pat Ryle, and he would always say, "How you gonna get a bloke to go on strike with you if you can't have a pint with him," right? And I think what I realized later that the jokes were really analysis. It wasn't always that, it was about different things, but you're talking about these contradictions and the contradiction, what does ridiculous mean, right? you're looking at these heightened contradictions, and things shouldn't be that way. And what a good joke is often doing is heightening contradiction and talking about a thing you already knew, but highlighting a thing that you maybe hadn't thought about before. So it's usually if somebody tells a good joke, just a stand-up comedian, it's not something, they're not talking about something you don't know about. They're talking about that thing, but in highlighting a thing that you didn't think about before. Also, it was about fun. What we want to build is a world where we have time for that, where we're not having to work 20 hours a day and not spend time with friends and family. And, so it has to do with all of these things. And I think early on with my music, I kind of discovered that. And it wasn't like I went into it knowing that, because I definitely think at first some of the people that I tried to imitate, they weren't like that. Like I think I was like imitating Ice Cube and Chuck D and all these folks who were very serious in their own way about things.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I was trying to make quote unquote good lyrics. And a good lyric is also something often that does that thing. It like skips over swaths of theory and does this thing that you didn't think it would do, but has this connection. It's making these connections. And, then people go, ooh, it's not abstract, and it's not just the next thing that's obvious. It's this other thing over here, and you put it together. And that sort of feeling is like what I was going for. And it wasn't until like my third album when a friend of mine was like, yeah, you do that funny and I was like, what are you talking about? And it would be all these things because I'd have these concepts that I wanted to do.
Yeah, you're trying to hide in that contradiction.
Yeah. And so I think that's what it is like you want to create a world that feels like how people feel when they're at a good party, right? They feel community, they feel love, they feel like they're part of something.
That was Boots Riley. His latest movie, I Love Boosters, is out now. Let's take another break. When we come back, we'll talk about what's non-negotiable in creative practice, and then we might get distracted, but in a good way. Stick around.
This is Nice Work. I'm Tyler Lake.
And I'm Alex Chambers.
And Alex, one of my favorite things about Kate's interviews with artists was how much she focused on process. She was an artist herself and a writer outside of work, so she was really interested in how people made creative output part of their daily lives. And in general, she was interested in the process of discovery in creative practice. And you'll hear that in almost every one of her interviews, just like this moment with ceramicist Claire Miller.
So what does your kind of day in the life look like in terms of art making and your job?
Yeah. So I work in my studio in the morning before I go to work. So I work here at IU from 9 to 5, and I work in my studio from like 7:15, 7:30 until just before 9. And that hasn't always been the case. I've tried working at other times of day, but I've found working before work means that, again, I always go to the studio. A few years ago, I had a meditation teacher who, over the course of several months, taught different mindfulness techniques. And sort of at the end of our time together, he asked our class, what are non-negotiable things in your life? And he said, non-negotiable in the way that sleeping is, or eating is, or even brushing your teeth is. And I know that ultimately he was sort of asking us to consider how can some of these mindfulness techniques you've learned be integrated into your life in a way that's non-negotiable. And I was really moved by that question. It prompted me to reflect so much on what are the things that I currently do in my life that are non-negotiable? Like I wake up, I put my glasses on, I turn the same 3 lights on, and then I make my coffee. And at the time I was transitioning into a new job, and I was really curious about what that would mean in terms of being in the studio. So I reflected a lot on how can being in the studio become a non-negotiable part of my day and my routine. And I realized that at this time in my life, no one ever asks me to do something before work. And I oftentimes had struggled in the past, especially with working full-time outside of the studio, with how the studio often felt like it was competing with other things. So, like today after work, I want to go to an event. And in the past, I would have thought, when I had sort of thought, well, I'll go to the studio after work, it always felt like those things were competing, whether it was going to an event or hanging out with a friend or making dinner. But by working in my studio before I go to work, it just has become a part of my routine. I oftentimes almost forget that I went to the studio because it's just kind of like I don't think, oh, did I brush my teeth today? Or did I have coffee today? I just know I did those things.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's sort of how going to the studio feels.
And when you get there, you don't have to think too much about what you're going to do. You already know.
Yeah.
And when do you decide that?
Yeah. So usually...
Like before you go to bed or something?
Well, I mean, usually it's just like, I know I'm working in a series of something. And unless I'm, finished with that series, then I have a decision about what I'm going to do next. But I also think by sort of as I was describing of if when I have a new idea pop up as I'm working on something and being like, nope, can't do that right now, I think I'm then sort of saving ideas for later so that when I actually finish making, 50 of that cup, which can take me, a couple of months, I have ideas already percolating and forming that I want to move to.
Kate was always discovering new things herself. It led to a lot of fun digressions in our editorial meetings, especially because Tyler, you and I also get excited about new ideas.
Yeah, that's true.
I do think allowing some digressions is part of the process. It's how you make discoveries, even if those discoveries aren't always in the directions you thought they were going, which I'm realizing is maybe feeling a little abstract. So let me just play you one more thing from our show.
Let's hear it.
On a weekend afternoon in late winter, the hosts of Nice Work, that's me and Kate Young and Tyler Lake, we decided to go to the Sculpture Trails Outdoor Museum in Greene County. The trip didn't quite turn out as we planned. Tyler drove to Kate's house before they came to get me.
All right, Kate.
Oh, hey, Tyler.
You got a lot of wood here.
Yeah, I do. I know we're getting ready to go over to Alex's, and I'm excited about that, but can I just do a couple more loads of this?
Yeah. So how much wood do you go through?
I don't know. I guess this is our first year, so we're still finding out, but I guess it's going to be about 3 ricks, which is about a cord.
Man, that's not math I know. Gonna go into business selling Kate's Rick Racks?
Yeah. So yeah, I've got this rack that's next to our porch, and I like to keep wood on there. So then we have more wood in the back because all of it didn't fit on this rack. So we have some in the back, and we've, got a lot of moving to do.
Really hard to imagine that you can tell yourself this is more convenient.
Hey, look, this is the way I look at it. In the middle of winter, you've been home all day on a Saturday, you haven't got out and done any exercise, almost sundown. I know, I can go move 5 wheelbarrows
there is
of
something
wood.
Like
that'll be some exercise.
That is definitely exercise. All right, so Alex, just so you know, what we're doing right now is Kate's doing the final step. That's getting the wood from the front porch with this nice leather satchel situation wood carrier.
Super cozy in here.
It's extremely cozy.
I mean, the thermometer next to the stove says 76. Maybe a little too warm. Anyway, the number one thing that I love about this stove is standing in front of it and doing nothing. Sometimes I will just stand here and just sway back and forth which I know sounds absurd, but it's like so calming. And so like, I feel like it's very rare for me to allow myself to just do nothing. But when I'm standing in front of this fire, somehow I feel like I have permission.
All right. I didn't realize until I listened to this how long Kate and Tyler spent by that wood stove. We had places to be, so I'm going to get them moving.
All right. So this is your new car.
My new, very old car. Yeah.
Okay.
2014. This is a 2014, so a now 12-year-old BMW i3. And I think this is worth mentioning. This car costs $5,000, which means it is highly problematic and may very well end up causing catastrophic failure, and I'll basically may just have to lose all the money. And I'm okay with that. I've come to terms with that. Because it may not catastrophically fail, and that'd be fun.
I like the color.
I think it's a really beautiful design. I mean, I was telling Alex that I think this is like, it's not really designed like a car, it's designed like a product.
So it's kind of I would call it a rust color, but it's shiny. And it's got kind of a short nose. Oh, I see what you mean. The front also looks very designed.
It does. There's nothing muscular or no imitation of feline or feminine form. That's a really common thing in automotive design.
All right. Interior-wise, this thing is unlike any other car I have been in. The door panels are this kind of charcoal gray fiber board kind of thing, which actually think it looks really cool. And then it's got these wood panels on the top of the dash curving down into this little dish almost, and then floating above the dish is a screen.
Yeah. So this is an entirely electric car. I don't run the heat a lot because watch this.
What?
We just lost 7 miles of range by turning the heat on.
Okay, so let's just keep it cool. How does it feel? Does it have good pickup?
I will show you. It is quicker than you think. Do you want to see really quickly?
Sure. Woo! Okay. Yeah, that had a pull.
It's fun to drive, even though it is in a lot of ways really inconvenient.
Okay, what's fun about it?
It feels like you're driving a novelty car, is what it feels like a little bit. In the same way that I think a stove is like a novelty way of heating your home, this feels like a novelty way of getting around.
Yeah, I can see that. But a car you might rely on to get you from one place to another.
Yeah, ideally.
You want to go right? Hey, Alex.
Wait, actually, the cat's might here. Let me just step out. So we're going to the sculpture trail, right?
That's the idea.
Yes.
I'm basically ready. I just have to bake some bread first.
Well, okay.
So you guys want to come in? It'll take a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not really thrilled about having to do it, but like I've realized that I have to do it. I can tell you about it.
Are you out of bread?
Yeah, I'm out of bread.
I mean, it makes sense. Kate had to move wood. All right, that's fine. We've got time. It's a Saturday afternoon.
So what do you got to do?
I'm getting the starter out. I just have to measure out the flour, weigh the starter, mix them together in the mixer, clean off the paddle, and then I do have to let it sit for 20 minutes. And then I have to add salt, weigh out the salt, and add that, and mix it again, clean off the dough hook, and then I'll be ready.
Well, I guess we can head out to the sculpture trail after you get that stuff done.
Yes, it'll be quick. It'll only take half an hour. All right. I don't want us to get too bogged down. I'm not going to play the whole half hour it took to make the bread. But during that 20 minutes when the dough had to sit, Kate and Tyler had some hard questions for me.
So why do you need to do this? When you answered the door, you said, I have to.
Yeah. It's funny, like I do talk about baking bread and how frequently I bake bread when it comes up in conversation, and like people are like, "Oh, that's so cool,"
And I'm like, it really doesn't feel cool at this point. It really feels like an obligation to myself. Like I really feel a little grumpy about it every week when I start it. It's not like I don't really need dough at this point, but it's not like I'm kneading dough and thinking about how wholesome the experience is and how relaxing it is.
Yeah, you're not getting centered and grounded in your dough.
No, I'm probably getting grumpy as I'm doing it. I wouldn't quite say grumpy, but it's like, okay, it's a chore. It feels like a chore.
What about the moment when you've baked a loaf and you take the lid off the Dutch oven?
Yeah. It's true, when it's done baking and you take it out, it is very, very satisfying. And the house smells really good. All right.
Hi, sweetie.
You are so cute. Well, should we go to the sculpture trail?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So you're done.
I'm done.
For now.
For now, yeah.
And we can go. All right.
Yeah.
Let's get
I'll
going.
do
Let me
cleanup
get
when
my
we get
jacket
back.
on and stuff.
Heading out to the car at last. Sorry to hold you guys up.
So, how far, by the way,
I think
is the
it's
sculpture trail?
like about 20 miles.
Yeah. We have 16 miles of range. I didn't charge the car last night. I parked out front, and I didn't.
And your car's in the shop,
Yeah.
and my car's back at my house.
Yeah.
So, and even
plus
if we
it's
could
kinda
get
late.
out there, we wouldn't even be able to get back.
Yeah. If it were fully charged, it would be close. But since I have less than a half a charge in it,
Well,
yeah.
that was a nice idea.
We got some stuff done. Kate moved some wood.
Yeah.
You got your bread
It
started.
was nice to have company while I made bread.
Yeah, less of a chore.
Such
Yeah,
a
exactly.
miserable task.
It's such a miserable task.
Yeah, and for us, we're really impressed. So
That's really my goal, is to impress people. I'm impressed with your car, Tyler.
It's a nice place to sit if you're not going very far.
If you're not, we're definitely not going very
We're not
far at
going
this
anywhere.
point.
hey, what's this called?
And that was our visit to the Sculpture Trails Outdoor Museum. It's free and it's open year-round, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the summer and 9 to 5 in the winter. You should visit sometime. We probably should, too.
Wow, Alex, I gotta say, we did make some pretty good radio for a minute there.
We did.
We talked to interesting people all about stuff that gets us excited, and we really went all over Bloomington to tell those stories. We went to plays, concerts, performance venues, art museums and galleries.
A lot of art galleries.
So many. And we talked to interesting people when they came to town. Dandy Wellington, Boots Riley, Ronnie Bitar, and a whole lot of other people.
We really did try to tell as many stories as possible that covered all of the arts and culture you can find here in Bloomington. But we also talked about the wider art world and design and film.
And video games and board games. And we talked to authors, musicians, painters, singers. So many creative, curious people.
Yeah. And Tyler, I don't want to get too high-minded or high-horsey, or high on the hog, or high frequency, or knee-high to a grasshopper. All right. So, this past weekend, I was reading about the philosopher Jürgen Habermas. Habermas's first major book is called The Structural Transformation of the Public Sphere. He says a few centuries ago, public debate about politics started with periodicals that were reporting on sales of goods, like commodity prices kind of thing.
Right.
Then they started writing about arts and literature. Habermas says the critical debate ignited by works of literature and art was soon extended to include economic and political disputes.
Okay, this kind of makes sense to me. Like lively, thoughtful conversations about art and culture lead to more critical thinking about everything else in your life.
Yeah, that's the idea.
But do you think what we did on Nice Work was part of that? Was it a vital part of democracy in Southern Indiana?
I mean, I'd like to say that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go quite that far. But I do think we were trying to give you, our listeners, a sense of how creative activity in our area is always evolving and of the people who were involved in that. And we wanted you to feel like you could be part of that if you're not already.
That's true. We tried to tell interesting stories in interesting ways, in our own way, not just the same old way that public media tends to tell art stories. And I think that helped us bring you, the listener, along for the ride. And I think occasionally we got at ideas or concepts or observations that could possibly broaden your perspective, if just a little bit.
That was our goal, at least. We'll leave it up to you to decide if we succeeded.
Either way, it felt really good to be trying.
It did. It was a good run. And now we're at the end. So hey, thanks, Tyler. Nice work.
Nice work to you, Alex. And to our dear co-host and friend, Kate Young. This show could not have happened without you.
You've been listening to Nice Work, a production of WFIU, WTIU, and Indiana Public Media. Find us at ipm.org.
This episode was produced and edited by Alex Chambers. We get production help from Danny William and Jonah Ballard.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Alan Davis. Additional music from Universal Production Music. The executive producer is Eric Bolstridge. Thanks for listening.
Nice work, Alex.
Nice work, Tyler.
If you like smart conversations, you'll like The State of Inquiry.
It's not just ChatGPT.
Marital satisfaction, how memory changes with age.
Social media, or to TikTok, or to influencers.
Strife, discord, and conflict. Enjoyment, motivation.
Cascading effects on rural communities.
Safe drinking water.
What can we do to deter changes?
It looks pretty, but it doesn't mean it's good.
The State of Inquiry, wherever you find podcasts and at ipm.org.